Tom King is at it again. He is one of the people that James Gunn has said is one of the architects of his DC universe, and it is a massive red flag. And here's just another piece of evidence on why that is a red flag. He's admitted that he has no clue what he's doing because he says that Wonder Woman wanting peace but waging war is a contradiction. What? Are you kidding me? Like, what is this guy even talking about? This guy was supposedly served in the CIA and was over in Iraq. Like, I don't know what he's even talking about here. But let's get into this because interestingly enough, not only does he expose he doesn't understand Wonder Woman, but he admits he only writes two types of stories: deconstructions, which no one likes except for maybe him and his sycophants. And then he says he writes trauma. Like, he admits that that's all he does. So let's get into it. So at least he has some self-awareness. So he did this in an interview with Comic Book Nation. It was back in March, but it was just kind of brought to my attention. Comicbook.com did an actual article and published to their site recently, so this came to my attention then. The host, Matt Aguilar, asked, from the character's perspective, what stands out to you about Wonder Woman, Diana as a character, and what do you hope to bring to the forefront in this series? So what's interesting is he answers the second question. I think he answers the second question first, where he admits that he only writes deconstructions and trauma. So he says, I kind of write two kinds of comics if you follow my career. I write these kind of deconstruction, kind of sad dude looking out a window comics, which I love. Like, seriously, no one else loves them. You ruined Batman with this crap. Things like Mr. Miracle, Human Target, Vision, which are like deconstructions of superheroes. They're not deconstructions. You literally destroy them. They are destructions. I mean, what you did to Guy Gardner is sick and disgusting, dude. Like, absolutely sick and disgusting. I don't know what kind of person would do that to an actual heroic character like a Green Lantern. Like, it's just wrong. I'm sort of taking them apart, putting them together, looking at what makes them tick, and having sort of fun at the same time. No, he doesn't take them apart. He doesn't put them together. He doesn't look at what makes them tick. He takes a hammer and just smashes them into oblivion. I mean, in the case of Guy Gardner, he literally kills him on the page. Kills him. And then I've written things like Superman Up in the Sky, Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, which are not that. I mean, they deal with trauma. They're huge, big stories. They're epic. They have ups and downs, but the point of those stories is to say the character is almost perfect, is wonderful, and has such strength in them that comes from a legacy of being, you know, in all this media and having all these writers. I don't even know what he's talking about here. I think he revealed what he actually writes in those stories in that second sentence there. I mean, they deal with trauma. That's pretty much the other point, how he writes it there. So then he revealed his goal for his Wonder Woman series, which is coming out in September, which I will not be purchasing. I haven't bought a Tom King book since the Batman stuff. Absolutely atrocious. And I thought the beginning was okay, and then it just went absolutely downhill from there. And my goal as an artist, as a writer, is to show you how awesome they are. And so that's what Wonder Woman is. It's not a deconstruction. I'm not tearing her apart and seeing how sad I can make her, even in a way I did to Batman. He literally admits that's what he did to Batman now. All the criticisms that people were trying to deflect, he's literally admitting that those were right, and he did it. It's wild. The point of this book is to show you how awesome Wonder Woman is. It is to show you someone who fights for peace. It is to show you someone who is a rebel against the system. I wouldn't call Wonder Woman a rebel against the system at all. I mean, for most of the time, she's fighting to restore the natural order of things. What I don't even know what he's talking about here. This is to put the highlight on a character who doesn't need to be fixed. So that's the intention of the book. Sometimes Wonder Woman can fall out of the Trinity. I think people go to Batman and Superman first, and she deserves to stand up there because I remember my daughter dressing up as Wonder Woman 3 years in a row and what it meant for her to like ask for a lasso, and my wife and I buying a rope and like painting it. I want her to be worthy of sort of what my daughter sees in her. That's my goal. Okay. I really don't like trying to use your kid to promote the story. I already feel like you're trying to emotionally manipulate it, and the fact that you worked at the CIA, really makes me think you're doing it on purpose and it's intentional. And I think that's even more disgusting. But let's continue here. He goes on and says, as for like who she is as a character, I mean, she's a contradiction. That's the hard part about it. The hard part about writing her is that she's almost radical in sort of her belief in love, compassion, and peace, much more so than sort of Superman and Batman. But she's also, you know, a warrior born. She's someone who comes from a society involved in sort of an endless conflict who trains you to fight. She comes from sort of that Game of Thrones atmosphere. It's kind of wild that you're trying to say compare Wonder Woman coming from Game of Thrones when Wonder Woman has been around like way longer than Game of Thrones, but that you have like that shows you just where the brand of Wonder Woman is that it's like way below Game of Thrones, and people actually think that the like Game of Thrones sucks after season 8. And I guess people are still talking about it with House of the Dragon, but it's nowhere near where it was as a cultural phenomenon with Game of Thrones. But there it is. And those two contradictions live inside of her. That's not a contradiction. Being for peace and having to wage war to protect peace is not a contradiction. That's actually an act of love, which we'll get to here. We actually have some moral experts explaining this. Way better than me. She's someone who wants peace but makes war, and her having to deal with that makes her one of the more interesting characters in fiction. That's pretty much what most superheroes do, right? I mean, Batman does that as well. Superman does it. Anyone who's act on violence to stop other people from committing even more heinous violence, they're usually doing that out of an act of love to stop these people. So that's not really out of the ordinary. That's pretty much one of the main driving forces for a lot of these characters that we consider heroes. But let's get into this whole idea of wanting peace but having to wage war to do it is somehow a contradiction. Well, it's just simply not true. And we have the National Conference of Catholic Bishops explain this in a paper that they wrote in like the 1989, I think, The Challenge of Peace, God's Promise, and Our Response. And they explain that St. Augustine viewed war, quote, in some cases at least, to restrain evil and protect the innocent. That classic case which illustrated his view was the use of lethal force to prevent aggression against innocent victims. Faced with the fact of attack on the innocent, the presumption that we do no harm, even to our enemy, yielded to the command of love, understood as the need to restrain an enemy who would injure the innocent. So I think that's very, very clear there that if someone is going out and basically mass murdering people, attacking people, killing them, killing the innocent, you can go and stop them from doing that. Like, yes, you can. It's called just war. So then we also have this here. The document goes on to explain that recourse to war is permissible only to confront a real and certain danger, i.e. to protect innocent life, to preserve conditions necessary for decent human existence, and to basic human rights. As both Pope Pius XII and Pope John the 23rd made clear, if war of retribution was ever justifiable, the risks of modern war negate such a claim today. So Diana's belief in love, compassion, and peace actually coincides with her being a warrior and waging war on those who put the lives of innocents at risk. So that's not a contradiction. That's not a contradiction at all. That is a very Christian thing to go to battle to protect innocents. As for what this series is going to be about, we do have a little bit more from this. King said in the interview, he said, Wonder Woman is more rebellious than that. Wonder Woman is not with the system. She's not trying to enforce the system. She's against the system. She's rebellious. She's iconoclastic, and I wanted to bring that in her. He's basically saying you're gonna be subverting all of Wonder Woman basically by having her as this kind of rebel. She's usually not, as far as the Wonder Woman stories I've seen, she's not a rebel. I mean, even if you want to look at that first movie, she's literally fighting for the Allies in World War I to stop the Germans, who are basically kind of rebelling against the quote unquote system, I guess. He said, so in this, she's not with the government, she's against the government, which I think in sort of our modern times, a lot of us have had the sort of instinct that there are great injustices happening with the people in power, and I wanted Wonder Woman to be the person who stands against that, absolutely. So this is clearly going to be some political screed, left-wing political screed, with Wonder Woman going against basically some straw man government that Tom King is going to introduce. It's going to be absolutely cringe. It's going to be terrible, and it's just going to be what you expect from DC Comics, a giant woke fest. So... and then if you want some more information about it, we got the actual description here. It says, after a mysterious Amazonian is accused of mass murder, Congress passes the Amazon Safety Act, barring all Amazons from U.S. soil. It literally is like a dreamer story. It's just ridiculous. Illegal immigration dreamer story. To carry out their plans, the government starts a task force, the Amazon extradition entity, to remove those who don't comply by any means necessary. Now in her search for the truth behind the killing, Wonder Woman finds herself an outlaw in the world she once swore to protect. Like, this is just terrible. Who wants to read this? No. So Tom King is going to put Wonder Woman under the axe, and he clearly doesn't understand the character, and he's clearly just injecting his own left-wing radical politics into the story. And it's going to suck, and no one's going to read it, just like no one's been reading any of his other books.